Let me start with a hard truth. In 2026, talent will not save you, hard work alone will not protect you, and motivation, no matter how strong, will not last. The world is changing faster than most people are willing to admit. Careers are shifting, expectations are rising, comfort is becoming expensive, and here's the real danger. Most people will enter 2026 using the same thinking that kept them stuck in the past. They'll chase success without clarity. They'll stay busy without progress. They'll work harder, but feel emptier. But a few will do something different. A few will understand that success is not about doing more. It's about doing the right things for the right reasons. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to share 5 success secrets that separate those who merely survive 2026 from those who own it. If you miss even one of these, you'll feel it in your career, your confidence, and your future. That's why you need to hear this until the very end. Success doesn't begin with goals. It begins with meaning. That's something most people misunderstand, especially as they step into a new year like 2026 with big plans, big resolutions, and big expectations. They write goals, they chase numbers, they set deadlines. But deep down, they don't know why any of it actually matters. And that's where the problem starts. Because goals without meaning are fragile. They look strong on paper, but the moment pressure appears, they collapse. People who fail in 2026 won't fail because they aren't ambitious enough. They will fail because their ambition has no direction. It's like driving fast without knowing where you're going. You burn fuel, you feel busy, but you don't arrive anywhere meaningful. When your why is unclear, everything feels harder than it should. A small obstacle feels like a wall. A simple delay feels like a personal attack. A minor setback feels like proof that you're not good enough. That's not because the obstacle is big, but because the reason behind your effort is weak. Without a clear why, your mind starts negotiating with discomfort. It asks, is this really worth it? And most of the time, the answer becomes no. That's why so many people quit, not when things are impossible, but when things are merely inconvenient. Think about how many times you've seen someone start strong new year, new energy, new motivation. They wake up early for a week. They work harder for a month. They stay consistent just long enough to feel proud. And then life happens. Pressure builds. Results take longer than expected. And suddenly the effort feels heavy. The discipline feels forced. The sacrifice feels unfair. Why? Because they were driven by excitement, not meaning. Motivation fades. Meaning doesn't. When you know why you do what you do, discipline changes its shape. It stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like alignment. You're no longer forcing yourself to act against your nature. You're acting in service of something you believe in. You wake up differently. You make decisions differently. You say no to things that don't matter without guilt. You say yes to hard things without complaining. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary for something bigger than comfort. A clear why gives context to pain. It doesn't remove struggle, but it gives struggle a reason. And when pain has a reason, it becomes tolerable, even meaningful. That's why 2 people can face the same challenge and respond completely differently. One gives up and calls it bad luck. The other endures and calls it part of the process. The difference isn't talent, it isn't resources. It's meaning. Sacrifice only feels like loss when you don't know what you're gaining. When your why is strong, sacrifice becomes intentional. You're not giving something up, you're trading it for something more important. Late nights make sense. Early mornings make sense. Missed distractions make sense, because every sacrifice is connected to a future you actually care about. Without that connection, sacrifice feels like suffering for nothing. And no one can endure that for long. Persistence is the natural outcome of meaning. You don't have to hype yourself up every day. You don't need external validation to keep going. You continue because stopping would betray something important to you. When your why is clear, quitting doesn't feel like rest, it feels like regret. And that inner standard is far more powerful than any external pressure. In 2026, the world will reward people who can stay consistent when results are slow. It will reward people who don't panic when progress isn't visible. It will reward people who don't change direction every time they feel uncomfortable. And the only people capable of that kind of consistency are those who know why they started in the first place. Everyone else will chase trends, follow noise, and mistake movement for progress. A clear why also protects you from comparison. When you don't know your reason, you measure yourself by other people's outcomes. Their success makes you impatient, their speed makes you insecure, their milestones make you question your own path. But when your why is solid, comparison loses its power. You stop asking why them and start asking, am I staying true to what matters to me? That shift changes everything. It replaces jealousy with focus, anxiety with direction. Your why is not supposed to impress others. It's supposed to anchor you. It doesn't need to be loud or dramatic. It just needs to be honest. It needs to be something that still matters on the days when no one is watching, when results are invisible, when effort feels lonely, because those are the days that decide your future. Not the exciting ones, the ordinary ones, the hard ones, the quiet ones. Before you ask how to succeed in 2026, ask why success matters to you in the first place. Not the surface level answers, not money, not status, not applause. Dig deeper. Ask what success would give you emotionally. Ask what problem you're trying to solve. Ask who benefits when you succeed, because when your success becomes about more than just you, your energy multiplies, responsibility increases, standards rise. A clear why also simplifies decisions. In a world full of options, opportunities, And distractions, most people feel overwhelmed. They say yes to too much. They scatter their energy. They feel busy but unfulfilled. But when your why is clear, decision-making becomes easier. You don't need to analyze everything. You simply ask one question: does this move me closer to what matters? If the answer is no, you walk away. No guilt, no confusion, no second guessing. In 2026, clarity will be more valuable than confidence, because confidence without direction leads to wasted effort. But clarity, even without confidence, leads to progress. You don't need to feel ready. You need to feel aligned. Alignment creates momentum. Momentum creates belief. Belief sustains action. When you lose your why, you lose your patience. You rush timelines, you force outcomes, you get frustrated with the process. But when you remember your why, you respect the journey. You understand that meaningful things take time. You stop asking, why isn't this happening faster? And start asking, who am I becoming through this? That question transforms frustration into growth. The people who thrive in 2026 will not be the most talented or the most connected. They will be the most grounded. Grounded in meaning, grounded in purpose, grounded in a reason that doesn't change when circumstances do. Because circumstances will change, markets will shift, plans will fail, expectations will be tested. And when that happens, only one thing will keep you standing: a clear, unshakable why. So before you chase success, define it. Before you demand results, define meaning. Before you commit to goals, commit to a reason that can survive pressure. Because when your why is strong enough, you won't need to force success in 2026. You'll be built for it. Confidence is celebrated everywhere. It's praised in interviews, highlighted on social media, and treated like the ultimate success ingredient. People are told to speak louder, walk bolder, and act like they already belong. But here's the truth: most people learn too late. Confidence without clarity is dangerous. In 2026, the most dangerous place to be is confident but confused. Because when you're confident and wrong, you don't hesitate. You move fast in the wrong direction. You waste time with certainty. You burn energy with pride. And you convince yourself you're making progress simply because you're moving. Clarity, on the other hand, doesn't look as impressive at first glance. Quiet, it's deliberate, doesn't rush. But clarity wins every time. Clarity tells you where to go before you decide how fast to move. It ensures that effort actually compounds instead of scattering. Without clarity, confidence becomes noise. With clarity, even a small amount of confidence becomes powerful. In 26, many people will appear successful on the outside. They'll be busy. Their calendars will be full. Their days will be packed with meetings, tasks, messages, and commitments. But inside, they'll feel disconnected and drained. Busy but misaligned. Productive but unfulfilled. That's what happens when confidence pushes you to say yes to everything, while clarity would have told you to say no to most things. Being busy feels like progress, but it often hides confusion. It's easier to stay in motion than to sit still and ask hard questions. Am I working towards something that actually matters? Is this path aligned with the life I want to build? Or am I just reacting to expectations, pressure, and fear of missing out? Confidence ignores these questions. Clarity demands answers. When you lack clarity, distractions feel irresistible. Every opportunity looks valuable. Every idea feels urgent. Every request feels important. You jump from one thing to another, not because it's strategic, but because you're afraid of choosing wrong. Ironically, by trying to keep every option open, you close the door on meaningful progress. Clarity eliminates that noise. It draws a line between what matters and what merely looks good. Clarity tells you what to say no to, and that may be its greatest power. Saying no is uncomfortable. It feels like rejection. It feels like loss. Confidence tries to compensate by saying yes loudly and often. But clarity understands something deeper. Every yes costs you something. Time, energy, focus. And in 2026, focus will be one of the most valuable currencies you have. Without it, talent is wasted. Effort is diluted. Potential remains unrealized. When you are clear, you don't need to explain every decision. You don't need approval. You don't need applause. You trust your direction enough to walk away from things that don't serve it. That kind of certainty is far stronger than surface-level confidence. It's not about how you look to others. It's about how aligned you feel with yourself. Clarity also tells you where to focus. And focus is not about doing more, it's about doing less better. Most people in 2026 will try to improve everything at once. They'll chase balance and burn out. They'll multitask and underperform. They'll spread themselves thin and call it ambition. But clarity simplifies. It narrows your attention to the few things that actually move the needle. It replaces chaos with intention. When your focus is clear, your energy changes. You stop feeling constantly tired, not because you're doing less, because you're doing what matters. Energy drains fastest when effort is misaligned. That's why people can work all day and still feel unproductive. They weren't exhausted from work, they were exhausted from confusion. Clarity removes that friction. It allows effort to flow instead of forcing it. Another hidden cost of lacking clarity is emotional exhaustion. When you don't know where you're going, every decision feels heavy. You second guess yourself, you replay conversations. You wonder if you're falling behind. Confidence might mask these feelings temporarily, but it doesn't resolve them. Clarity does. It gives you a reference point, a compass, a reason to trust your decisions even when outcomes are uncertain. In 2026, many people will chase confidence as a solution to their anxiety. They'll try to feel better by appearing stronger. But anxiety doesn't come from weakness, it comes from misalignment, from moving without meaning, from acting without direction. The moment clarity enters the picture, Anxiety begins to loosen its grip, not because life becomes easy, but because it becomes intentional. You don't need more confidence. Confidence grows naturally when clarity is present. When you know what you're building, you don't need to fake belief. Belief emerges from consistency, from seeing your actions align with your values, from watching small, deliberate steps accumulate into progress. That's real confidence, the kind that doesn't need validation. Clarity also protects you from comparison. When your direction is unclear, other people's paths look tempting. Their success feels threatening. Their speed makes you feel late. But when you're clear, comparison loses relevance. You stop asking, why am I not there yet? And start asking, am I moving in the right direction for me? That shift restores peace, and peace fuels performance. In a world that constantly tells you to be louder, faster, and bolder, clarity asks you to be honest. Honest about what you want, honest about what you don't, honest about what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not. That honesty creates alignment, and alignment creates momentum that confidence alone can never sustain. The people who win in 2026 won't be the most aggressive or the most outspoken. They'll be the most intentional. They'll know what matters and protect it fiercely. They'll move steadily while others sprint in circles. They'll say no without fear and yes without hesitation because their direction is clear. When clarity leads, confidence follows. But when confidence leads without clarity, confusion multiplies. So don't chase confidence as your foundation. Build clarity first, because clarity doesn't just help you move forward, it ensures you're moving towards something worth reaching. Most people think in weeks. They plan around the next paycheck, the next deadline, the next small win. Some think in months. They set quarterly goals, seasonal targets, short-term milestones that feel responsible and structured. But very few think in years. And that difference in time horizon is the silent separator between those who struggle and those who build something that lasts. Long-term thinking doesn't look impressive in the beginning. It doesn't provide instant rewards. It doesn't satisfy the ego quickly, but it quietly compounds, and in 2026, it will be the most powerful advantage a person can have. Success in 2026 will belong to those who understand how to delay comfort for growth. Not because they enjoy discomfort, but because they understand the trade. They know that every moment of comfort chosen too early steals something from the future. Comfort feels harmless in the moment. It feels earned. It feels deserved. But comfort, when chosen repeatedly, becomes a ceiling. Growth requires friction. It requires patience. It requires a willingness to feel temporarily uncomfortable for a permanently better life. Short-term pleasure is seductive because it's loud. It promises relief now. Long-term freedom is quiet because it requires faith. It asks you to trust a process you can't fully see yet. And most people struggle with that. They want proof before commitment. They want results before effort. They want certainty before risk. Long-term thinkers reverse that order. They commit first. They invest early. They stay consistent even when nothing seems to be happening. Every decision you make is a vote, not just a choice in isolation, but a signal about the kind of life you are building. What you eat, how you spend your time, what you tolerate, what you avoid, what you practice, none of it is neutral. Each decision votes either for the life you want or the life you'll regret. And regret rarely comes from one big mistake. It comes from thousands of small, seemingly harmless decisions that were never questioned. The problem with short-term thinking is not that it feels wrong. It feels logical. It feels practical. It feels realistic. Why sacrifice now when you can enjoy now? Why plan so far ahead when nothing is guaranteed? But that mindset quietly traps people in cycles. They stay reactive. They respond to life instead of designing it. They confuse motion with progress and urgency with importance. Long-term thinking requires asking different questions. Not what feels good right now, but what will this cost me later? Not can I get away with this today, but who does this turn me into over time? These questions slow you down. They create pause. And in that pause, better decisions are made. In 2026, distractions will be everywhere. Instant gratification will be easier than ever. Quick wins will be celebrated loudly. But the people who truly succeed will be the ones willing to look beyond the noise. They'll understand that what matters most rarely feels urgent. Health doesn't demand attention until it's compromised. Skills don't demand development until you're replaced. Relationships don't demand care until they're damaged. Long-term thinkers act before the crisis, not after it. Delayed gratification is not about denial. It's about intention. It's choosing alignment over impulse. It's understanding that saying no now can create a bigger yes later. Most people don't fail because they lack opportunity. They fail because they trade their future for convenience. They choose ease over effort, entertainment over education, relief over resilience. And each choice feels small until the consequences add up. Thinking in years also changes how you handle setbacks. When your timeline is short, every obstacle feels like a threat. Every delay feels catastrophic. But when you think long-term, setbacks lose their power. They become data, not verdicts. A bad month doesn't define you. A slow year doesn't defeat you. You understand that meaningful growth is rarely linear. It curves, it pauses, it tests your patience before it rewards your persistence. Long-term thinkers are willing to look foolish early. They invest in skills before they're needed. They build habits before motivation disappears. They plant seeds without demanding immediate harvest. And while others chase visibility, they build foundations. While others chase applause, they build competence. While others sprint, they walk steadily forward. This way of thinking also changes how you measure success. You stop chasing outcomes and start evaluating systems. You stop asking, did I win today? And start asking, did I show up in alignment with the future I want? That shift removes pressure and creates consistency. You're no longer dependent on daily results for validation. You're committed to a direction, not a mood. 5-year thinking forces honesty. It exposes patterns. It asks you to confront uncomfortable truths about where your current choices are leading. It removes the illusion that you can outrun consequences. And it replaces it with something far more empowering: agency. The understanding that your future is not something you wait for, it's something you vote for daily. The people who thrive in 2026 will not be those who react the fastest. They will be those who plan the farthest. They will understand that freedom is built slowly through discipline and patience. Financial freedom, physical strength, emotional stability, and professional relevance are all long-term projects. There are no shortcuts, only trade-offs. And long-term thinkers choose their trade-offs consciously. Thinking in years also builds resilience. When you expect the journey to be long, you stop panicking at resistance. You pace yourself. You rest strategically instead of quitting impulsively. You understand that endurance matters more than intensity. One powerful day won't change your life, but 1,000 aligned days will. Most people overestimate what they can change in a week and underestimate what they can build in 5 years. That misunderstanding leads to frustration. Long-term thinking corrects it. It replaces impatience with perspective. It teaches you to value progress over speed and direction over drama. In 2026, the question won't be whether opportunities exist. They will. The question will be who is prepared to take advantage of them. Preparation is invisible. It happens quietly, consistently, long before recognition arrives. And it requires a mindset willing to invest today for a payoff tomorrow. So every time you face a decision, small or big, remember that it's not just about now. It's a vote for strength or weakness, growth or stagnation, freedom or regret. And while the future may feel far away, it is being shaped right now, one choice at a time. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself. That's the misunderstanding that causes so many people to reject it before they ever experience its power. They see discipline as restriction, as punishment, as a life without freedom. But discipline is not about denying who you are. It's about deciding who you're becoming. It's about honoring your future instead of surrendering to your impulses. And in 2026, that distinction will matter more than ever. Motivation feels exciting, but it's unreliable. It comes and goes. It rises when things are new and disappears when things get hard. In 2026, motivation will fail you, not because you're weak, but because motivation was never designed to carry long-term responsibility. It's emotional, it's temporary, and it's easily influenced by mood, stress, and circumstance. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't depend on how you feel. It depends on what you've decided. Systems won't fail you. Habits won't fail you. Standards won't fail you. They operate quietly in the background, even on days when you feel tired, distracted, or uninspired. That's why disciplined people don't rely on willpower. They rely on structure. They design their environment to support the future they want instead of constantly fighting their present impulses. Discipline is how you prove to yourself that your goals matter, not through big declarations or public promises, but through small, consistent actions. It's showing up when no one is watching. It's keeping your word when breaking it would be easier. Over time, these moments build something powerful: self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence, resilience, and leadership. When you don't trust yourself, everything feels heavy. You hesitate, you overthink, you second-guess your decisions. You promise yourself you'll start tomorrow because you don't believe today will last. But when you trust yourself, you move differently. You act with calm certainty. You don't need external pressure because your internal standard is enough. Discipline builds that standard. It tells your mind again and again that you are someone who follows through. And once your identity aligns with that belief, behavior becomes easier. You're no longer fighting yourself, you're supporting yourself. Many people confuse freedom with the absence of discipline. But look closely and you'll see the opposite is true. The least disciplined lives are often the most restricted. Restricted by finances, restricted by health, restricted by emotions they never learned to manage. Discipline creates freedom by expanding your options. It gives you control over your time, your energy, and your future. In 2026, the people who thrive won't be the ones who feel motivated every day. They'll be the ones who act with consistency regardless of emotion. They'll understand that feelings are not instructions, they're signals. Discipline allows you to acknowledge how you feel without allowing it to dictate what you do. Habits are discipline on autopilot. They reduce decision fatigue. They remove friction. They make progress inevitable instead of optional. When you build habits aligned with your goals, you don't have to negotiate with yourself every morning. The work gets done because that's who you are now. Standards are the invisible line you refuse to cross. They define what you tolerate from yourself and from others. When your standards are low, discipline feels unnecessary. When your standards are high, discipline becomes natural. You don't settle because settling would violate who you believe yourself to be. Discipline is also an act of respect for your future self. It's choosing not to offload today's discomfort onto tomorrow's consequences. It's understanding that every shortcut you take now becomes a burden later. Discipline says, I care enough about who I'm becoming to do what's uncomfortable today. Most people wait for discipline to feel good before they commit to it. But discipline earns its meaning after the action, not before. The pride comes later. The confidence comes later. The results come later. Discipline asks for faith up front and rewards you with trust over time. Without discipline, goals remain wishes, plans remain ideas, potential remains unused. Discipline is the bridge between intention and outcome. It's the daily practice of choosing alignment over ease. And while it may feel small in the moment, its impact is massive when compounded. Discipline also teaches patience. It removes the illusion that progress should be instant. It trains you to value effort even when results are delayed. That patience is critical in 2026, when comparison and instant gratification will constantly test your resolve. There will be days when discipline feels lonely, when no one notices your effort, when shortcuts look tempting, when quitting feels justified. But those are the days when discipline matters most. Not because they're dramatic, but because they're defining. They quietly shape who you are becoming. Once you trust yourself, nothing can stop you. Because obstacles lose their power when you know you respond with consistency. Fear loses its grip when you trust your follow-through. Doubt fades when your past actions prove your commitment. Discipline is not about being harsh with yourself. It's about being honest. Honest about what you want. Honest about what it takes. Honest about the cost of not acting. And that honesty practiced daily becomes self-respect. In 2026, discipline will separate those who drift from those who build, those who hope from those who execute, those who wait from those who become. Not through force, but through faith in themselves, earned one disciplined action at a time. If you're comfortable, you're not growing. That statement sounds simple, but it carries a truth most people spend their lives avoiding. Comfort feels good. It feels familiar. It feels safe. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. Comfort signals that nothing is changing, nothing is being challenged, nothing new is being demanded of you. Growth, by its very nature, disrupts comfort. It introduces tension, it forces adaptation. And if you're growing, you will feel resistance. Not because something is wrong, but because something is changing. In 2026, success will not belong to those who protect their comfort. It will belong to those who are willing to leave it. The world is moving too fast for stagnation. Skills become outdated, roles evolve, expectations rise, and those who cling to what feels safe will slowly fall behind, often without realizing it until the gap is too wide to close easily. Discomfort is often misunderstood as a warning sign. People feel it and assume they're on the wrong path. They experience resistance and interpret it as failure. But discomfort is not a signal to stop. It's a signal to pay attention. It's evidence that you're stretching beyond what you already know. And stretching is how capacity is built. Success in 2026 will demand uncomfortable conversations. Conversations where you speak up instead of staying silent, where you set boundaries instead of avoiding conflict, where you ask for feedback instead of protecting your ego. These moments feel tense because they challenge your identity. They force you to choose growth over approval. And most people avoid them because short-term peace feels better than long-term progress. It will also demand unfamiliar skills. Learning something new always feels awkward at first. You feel slow, you feel exposed, you feel incompetent. That discomfort bruises the ego, and many people retreat back to what they're already good at. But staying where you're competent is the fastest way to become irrelevant. Growth requires being willing to be bad at something long enough to eventually become good at it. Uncertain paths are another form of discomfort most people fear. The need for certainty is deeply human. We want guarantees. We want clear outcomes. But growth rarely offers certainty up front. It offers opportunity wrapped in risk. And those who wait for clarity before they act often wait forever. The few who move forward without full assurance are the ones who discover paths others never find. Most people retreat at the first sign of discomfort because discomfort threatens identity. It challenges the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. It exposes gaps, it reveals weaknesses, and that exposure feels vulnerable. But vulnerability is not weakness, it's the price of progress. Those who lean into discomfort rise faster than they ever imagined, not because they enjoy struggle, but because they understand its purpose. They don't seek pain for its own sake. They seek growth, knowing that discomfort is the admission fee. They reinterpret resistance as training instead of threat. Discomfort also builds resilience. When you repeatedly choose hard things, your tolerance for difficulty expands. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once felt impossible becomes routine. Growth doesn't remove challenges, it raises your capacity to handle them. In 2026, many people will mistake ease for success. They'll choose convenience, comfort, and familiarity, believing that stability equals progress. But true growth is dynamic. It requires adaptation. It requires letting go of old versions of yourself that no longer serve where you're going. There is a quiet confidence that comes from surviving discomfort, from realizing that you can handle more than you thought. That confidence is earned, not borrowed. And it cannot be achieved through comfort alone. It's forged through moments where quitting felt reasonable but continuing felt meaningful. Discomfort sharpens awareness. When things are easy, attention fades. When things are challenging, focus increases. You learn faster. You listen more closely, you become present. Growth demands that level of engagement. The discomfort of growth is different from the pain of stagnation. Growth discomfort is temporary and purposeful. Stagnation pain is subtle but permanent. It shows up as regret, resentment, and the haunting question of what could have been. Most people choose the former pain without realizing it because it's familiar. But familiarity does not make it harmless. Every meaningful transformation requires letting go of old habits, old beliefs, old comforts. That process feels like loss because, in a way, it is. But what you gain is far greater than what you leave behind. Growth is not meant to feel safe. It's meant to feel worth it. Those who succeed in 2026 will be those who don't run from resistance but learn from it, who don't avoid discomfort but evaluate it. Not all discomfort is good, but the kind that aligns with growth is invaluable. It teaches discipline, it builds character, it expands perspective. When you lean into discomfort, you also reclaim agency. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop outsourcing responsibility to circumstances. You decide that progress matters more than ease. And that decision compounds. Growth asks for courage in small daily moments. The courage to speak when silence is easier, to try when failure is possible, to stay when escape is tempting. These moments rarely look dramatic, but they shape your future more than any single breakthrough. In 2026, comfort will be readily available. Growth will not. Growth must be chosen repeatedly, intentionally, often when it feels least appealing. And those who make that choice will look back and realize that the discomfort they once feared was the very thing that unlocked their potential. One powerful day won't change your life. It may feel inspiring, it may feel productive, it may even feel transformative in the moment, but by itself it fades. What actually shapes a life are the many ordinary days that follow. Days without excitement, without recognition, without visible progress. Those days don't look impressive, but they are decisive. And that is why success is built on consistency, not intensity. Most people fall in love with intensity. Intensity feels heroic. It looks dramatic. It creates stories worth telling. Late nights, bursts of effort, sudden motivation. These moments give the illusion of commitment. But intensity is emotional, and emotions are unpredictable. People rely on emotional highs to carry them forward. And when those highs disappear, so does the effort. That's where failure quietly begins. Successful people don't depend on how they feel. They depend on what they do repeatedly. They build routines that function even when motivation is low. They design their lives so progress happens whether or not they're inspired. In 2026, this difference will matter more than ever, because the world will reward those who can sustain effort long after excitement fades. Small actions done consistently will outperform massive effort done occasionally. This is not theory. It's how compounding works. One intense workout doesn't build strength, but showing up regularly does. One inspired work session doesn't build a career, but steady contribution does. One meaningful conversation doesn't build a relationship, but consistent presence does. Consistency multiplies, intensity spikes and crashes. The problem with relying on intensity is that it demands perfect conditions. You need the right mood, the right timing, the right energy. But life rarely offers that. There will always be reasons to skip, delay, or quit. Consistency accepts imperfection. It doesn't wait for ideal circumstances. It shows up anyway. Showing up when it's boring is where real success is built. Boredom is the test most people fail. When learning feels repetitive, when progress feels slow, when effort feels unexciting, boredom creates doubt. It whispers that maybe this isn't working. Maybe you're wasting your time. Maybe you should try something new. Consistency requires ignoring that voice and trusting the process, especially when it's boring. Showing up matters, because boredom often signals that you've moved past novelty and into mastery. The early stages of anything are exciting: new ideas, new tools, new energy. But growth doesn't happen in novelty. It happens in repetition, in refinement, in doing the same thing slightly better again and again. In 2026, many people will chase new strategies instead of mastering fundamentals. They'll jump from method to method, habit to habit, goal to goal, looking for something that feels exciting. But excitement is not a requirement for progress. Commitment is. Consistency is the willingness to stay with something long enough for it to work. Consistency also builds identity. When you act consistently, you stop seeing effort as something you do and start seeing it as who you are. You're no longer someone trying to improve, you're someone who shows up. That identity shift is powerful because behavior follows identity. Once showing up becomes part of who you are, quitting feels unnatural. Routines protect progress. They reduce decision fatigue. They eliminate the daily debate of whether or not to act. When something is scheduled, structured, and expected, it happens with less resistance. That's why successful people don't rely on discipline alone. They rely on systems that make consistency easier. People often overestimate what intensity can accomplish and underestimate what consistency can build. They expect dramatic results in short periods and feel discouraged when reality doesn't match the fantasy. Consistency teaches patience. It aligns expectations with reality. It replaces urgency with endurance. Consistency also creates trust with yourself and with others. When you consistently show up, people learn they can rely on you. Opportunities increase, responsibility grows, and internally self-trust strengthens. You stop questioning whether you'll follow through because history has already answered that question. Inconsistency, on the other hand, erodes confidence. Each broken promise weakens belief. Each abandoned habit reinforces doubt. Over time, inconsistency creates a pattern of disappointment that has nothing to do with ability and everything to do with reliability. Consistency doesn't require perfection. Missed days happen, mistakes occur, progress stalls. But consistency is not about never failing, it's about returning quickly. It's about minimizing gaps, it's about refusing to let a setback become a stopping point. In 2026, the people who succeed will not be those who work the hardest for short bursts. They will be those who work steadily for long periods. They will understand that sustainable effort beats explosive effort every time. That endurance is more valuable than enthusiasm. Consistency also removes fear. When you know you'll show up tomorrow, today doesn't feel as heavy. You don't put pressure on single moments to define you. You understand that growth is cumulative. One day is not the verdict. It's just one contribution. When you rely on consistency, progress becomes inevitable. You don't need dramatic breakthroughs. You need direction and repetition. Over time, skills sharpen, confidence grows, results appear, and often they arrive quietly without fanfare until one day people call it overnight success. But there is nothing overnight about it. It was built in the ordinary, in the boring, in the moments no one applauded, in the routines that didn't look impressive but never stopped. That's where real success is built. Opportunities don't chase desperate people. That may sound uncomfortable, but it's true. Desperation repels because it communicates need without direction. It signals urgency without clarity. Purpose, on the other hand, attracts. It creates gravity. People are drawn to those who know why they do what they do, even if they can't yet explain how they'll get there. In 2026, this difference will quietly determine who keeps searching for opportunities and who finds opportunities showing up at their door. Purposeful people move differently. They don't rush into everything. They don't beg for attention. They don't shape themselves to fit every room. They stand for something, and that stance creates identity. When you stand for something, people notice, not because you're loud, because you're consistent. Consistency builds trust, and trust is the currency that opens doors. When you don't have purpose, you chase validation, you seek approval, you adjust your direction based on applause. And that makes your effort scattered. People sense when someone is performing instead of building. In contrast, purposeful people are anchored. They don't need constant reassurance. They're guided by internal alignment, not external reaction. Trust forms naturally around people who are purposeful. They say what they mean and do what they say. Their actions are predictable in the best way, not boring but reliable. In a world full of noise, reliability stands out. People gravitate toward those they can count on, especially when uncertainty is high. Doors open when trust exists. Opportunities flow through relationships, not RA summas alone. People recommend those they believe in. They collaborate with those who share values. They invest in those who demonstrate commitment beyond self-interest. Purpose communicates that commitment without needing explanation. Success in 2026 will not come from chasing validation. Validation is fleeting. It shifts with trends, opinions, and moods. If your sense of worth depends on recognition, you'll always be reacting. Purpose frees you from that trap. It allows you to focus on the work instead of the applause. And paradoxically, that focus is what attracts recognition when it matters. Becoming valuable is a long-term strategy. It requires patience, it requires learning, it requires humility, but it pays off in ways chasing attention never can. Value compounds, skills deepen, insight grows, and when value is present, opportunities don't need to be hunted, they appear. Focusing on impact changes how you approach your work. You stop asking, what do I get? And start asking, what problem am I solving? That shift expands your influence. People remember those who make things better, those who leave a positive mark, those who contribute more than they consume. Contribution builds reputation. Not the kind built on self-promotion, but the kind built on results. Quiet results. Consistent results that speak for themselves. In 2026, when competition is high and trust is scarce, contribution will be a powerful differentiator. Service is often misunderstood as weak.